Joined now by Graham Bell, who happened to pick up the signal for AM 1190 out of Weyburn in probably a location many here in Southeast Saskatchewan would never expect. First, Graham, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, Stephen. So it's Graham Bell. I live in Oxford in England. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm not actually English. I come from South Africa originally, from Cape Town, which is even further away. But I've been doing this hobby since I was a teenager, listening to AM stations all over the world. There's certain conditions that make this possible, and this place in Finland that I've been going to is up in the Arctic Circle. It's about 1,000 kilometers north of Helsinki, and these Finnish radio fanatics have set up these two cabins where we go in the middle of winter. They have 14 different antennae pointing in different directions, and each one of them is 1 kilometer long. So it's an incredible place.
So, how did it come about that you ended up listening to AM 1190?
Well, I was listening. Well, let me just tell you, being up in Finland at that time of the year, early December, the sun doesn't actually rise. It doesn't actually rise above the horizon for about 6 weeks. It's only just popped back above the horizon, I think, on the 13th of January. And what that means is that AM radio signals can travel extraordinary distances at night when it's dark. And the reason is that AM at night travels into the sky, and it passes through what's called the ionosphere, which is these layers of positively charged ions. An ion is a positively charged particle, electric particle. And at night, some of the lower layers of the ionosphere disappear, and the higher layers become more active. And then a signal like yours suddenly leaps up, and it kind of ducts along, and it can dip down to Earth again and then bounce off the Earth and go back up again. And that's what was happening to your signal. And as hobbyists, we know that, and we've got these really good aerials, and because they're so long, they are directional. So I had an aerial that evening, which I think was 321 degrees from where I was, and that was pointing pretty much straight at Weyburn. And so signals like yours were coming in.
Now, you mentioned that this is a hobby and it's hobbyists. So is it kind of just trying to see what signals you can pick up from where in the world?
Exactly, yeah. And so with those 14 different antennae, depending on the time of day, we can hear anything from New Zealand down in the sort of deep southeast to Hawaii, Alaska, Saskatchewan, obviously, and then also down into South America as well. So we can basically hear the whole planet depending on the time of day. But because it's dark all the time in Finland at that time, there's something on the go all the time. That's what makes it so interesting.
Now, how does one get involved in a hobby like this? As you mentioned, it's something you've been doing since you were a teenager, but how do you kind of get started in that?
Well, it's a lot of us have the same kind of story. So, I was a teenager, and this is way before your time. When I was a kid, we used to have radiograms, which were these big pieces of furniture, really, that had an analog radio dial. So you would twist the knob, and it had a little red indicator, and it would move across the dial. And in those days, they used to write the names of certain places that you could hear, like BBC or Voice of America or Radio Moscow. And next to it was a radiogram, which was a gramophone, which my father used to play his jazz records. But I was interested in the radio, and I would sort of tune around every now and again, and I would hear these distant stations. And I just got hooked.
So you mentioned, New Zealand would be probably the furthest signal that you've picked up using one of those antenna?
Yeah, New Zealand is about 10,000 miles away, but from Cape Town, I've been able to hear, this is before we moved to Oxford 3 years ago, but from Cape Town, we heard also stations about 10,000 miles away. Cape Town to California is 10,000 miles. Cape Town to Saskatchewan is about 9,000 miles. And I never managed to hear any sort of central or eastern, western Canadian stations. I heard quite a few from the eastern side, so like Toronto and those sorts of areas. But Saskatchewan is quite a catch for me, no matter where I am.
And of course, now, how did you find us? Because that's kind of the neat thing. If you try, like, it was just a Google search for AM 1190 and the call letters and see what would come up.
Nope, it's more random than that. So the radio that I have, if you hang on 1 second, I'll show you what it is.
Okay.
Sorry, this is the radio here. The bit on the bottom is just a box, a radio, and the bit on the top is a battery, so that I can run it off the mains, and so I can connect it from the back to my PC with USB. And what this radio does is I can record the entire AM spectrum. So, you're on you're on the higher end of the AM band, but the AM band moves from sort of 540 up to 1700, and I can record that entire spectrum for quite long periods of time. So, look, I use a lot of gigabytes when I do it, but so what I'm doing is I hit the record button maybe 5 minutes before the hour, and I let it run for 15 minutes, because most stations like yourselves will identify at the top of the hour, or in your case, you will quite often identify or give a station identification between tracks that you play on your country music, and that's exactly what I got. So I think I reported you, probably 7 or 8 minutes after the hour, between two tracks. You came in with your station cue.
Today's hits and all your country favorites. AM 1190 Weyburn, a Golden West radio station.
And I heard you. So it was random, because I'm going across the band over time, and I'm listening to each frequency to see what I can pick up. And what often will happen is that CFSL might fade in quite nicely, but it might then fade out again, and something else will fade in. And this is going on, all the way through the night.
It sounds fascinating. I guess the only thing, going up all the way up to northern Finland in the middle of winter, I guess, isn't the the ideal conditions to do it in, but it's or weather-wise, but at least it's the ideal conditions to be able to pick that up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's minus 15, 20 degrees at the coldest point. So, I mean, that's nothing too shocking for someone like you to understand. And luckily, the wind doesn't seem to blow too much at that time of the year. So the wind chill factor is pretty low. There are two cabins there. There's enough for as a sleeping place for two people, two men in this case. One of the cabins has a sauna bath, being Finland, and then the other cabin has the radio set up with the aerials coming in. And in truth, we don't really spend that much time outside. The only thing I had to do was these aerials are they're 1 kilometer long, and they're on poles that are 4 meters high. And there's ice and snow, and when it snows, the snow turns to ice on the cable. It's a copper cable like this, and so whoever's up there for that week, you get this telescopic pole with a little hook on it, and you have to walk along beneath the copper wires just to make sure that they're not icing over too much. And one of the main reasons for that is because there are a lot of reindeer around that area, and you really don't want to be strangling any reindeer up there.